This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss, co-host of PBS's Motor Week. He'll take your calls and comments now at 844-885-4677 or email him at radio@goss-garage.com. And now, Pat Goss.
Hi everybody, welcome to Goss's Garage. If you want to talk about your car, how about giving me a call? I would love to talk to you. Number's 844-885-4677. Now, you notice something that's been going on, something rather interesting. See, we are in the midst of the biggest horsepower race in over half a century. See, most car ads and reviews talk about power, and most reviewers complain that nearly everything needs even more power. But think about this. Back in 1992, Chevrolet brought out their new Corvette LT1 engine with a whopping 300 horsepower. It was big news at the time because, unlike some of the ratings used previously, this was 300 net horsepower, as opposed to earlier gross horsepower ratings. The difference being that gross horsepower is rated with a bare engine, where net is rated with all the accessories and emissions equipment installed and working. Now today, everything is rated in net horsepower, and we see some amazing numbers. 500, 600, Hellcat 707, and all kinds of 3 and 400s. So why aren't these cars so fast they're hard to drive? Well, my new Jeep Grand Cherokee, for instance, has the same horsepower as the Corvette LT1 or the mighty 12-cylinder BMWs of 1992, but it sure doesn't feel like either one. Why? To make a car really fast, it has to be really light, and modern cars are anything but really light. Thanks to more safety equipment and tons more amenities, many modern cars are bloated and heavy to the point they need giant horsepower numbers just to maintain normal performance. But just adding horsepower isn't the whole answer. When car shopping, most drivers look for more power, but rarely consider other much more important performance factors. Only buying horsepower doesn't guarantee a great feeling or performing car. More important are power to weight ratio and torque. Power to weight ratio has a huge effect on how a car performs. The more power you have relative to the weight of the vehicle, the better it performs. High performance cars are usually very light with big engines, so they have a high power to weight ratio. A high performance engine in a lightweight sports car makes it go like stink. Excuse me, but put that same engine into a giant 18-wheeler and it would be lucky to even move the big beast. Turn that around and put the 18-wheeler's engine in the sports car and it would literally tear the car apart. So there are limits. You want a high power to weight ratio, not just high horsepower. In some cases, a better power to weight ratio will also mean better fuel economy because the engine doesn't have to work as hard to move the car. Also, consider torque, which is the twisting force needed to get the car moving. More torque makes the car feel better during acceleration. Also, the lower the RPM, where the highest torque number occurs, the stronger the car will feel. So power to weight and torque are important. But my advice to you is toss the numbers and trust your butt. Buy cars based on how they feel to you, not numbers on a screen or how they feel to some test driver you don't know and will never know. Hey, cars are different, people are different. There's a butt made to fit every seat, but not all butts fit all seats. So the thing to remember here about buying a car and performance and all of that is that you want the car to feel good to you. You want the acceleration to be something that makes you feel good. And remember that some of these blindingly fast cars, they're not that much fun to drive on a day-to-day basis. So you're looking for something that makes you feel good, not that creates some magical number on a test or something like that. That really doesn't make any difference. What is different is how it feels when you drive it. So it always comes back to that, how the car feels to you. Doesn't make any difference whether I like the car. You know, I road test cars all the time. You know, on our Motor Week show, we do a couple new cars every week. I get to drive a lot of those. Does that mean if I like that car that you should like it? No, no way. The same with all of the other people who do road tests and reviews on cars. Whether they like it or dislike it doesn't matter. What I might call a harsh ride, you might call a cushy ride. Everything is relative, and it all comes back to you. You have to be the one person in the world that is happy with the car you buy. All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back here on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
How quickly we forget. We're right back to using short-term logic to make long-term purchases. There's a huge increase in sales of big, thirsty vehicles. Trucks, SUVs, and other vehicles with dismal gas mileage are selling like hotcakes. Yes, they're wonderful, but can your budget support such a thirsty beast when gas prices go back to $4 a gallon? Did you plan on that? On the plus side, if you're considering a thrifty car, you might get a real deal. With so many drivers ignoring reality, there are more hybrid and plug-ins in stock. Traditionally, hybrids have not been a great deal because when gas prices are sky high, everyone wants one, which pushes their prices up. Sometimes so high that you might have to pay over window sticker to get a hybrid or a plug-in. But higher purchase prices mean it can take years to break even through savings at the pump. It has taken many drivers so long to break even that trade-in time came before they broke even. But cheaper gas zaps hybrid demand, and less demand can mean a better deal. So if you've been thinking about an economy car, now might be the time. That's using long-term logic to buy a long-term product. That's smart. Life changes at a ferocious pace these days, especially when it comes to maintaining our cars. For example, automatic transmissions now need regular fluid flushes. Transmission fluid breaks down with use, and although it may look fine, its additives wear out and it can no longer properly protect bands, clutches, seals, and other hugely expensive parts inside your transmission. Bottom line, more wear and a shorter transmission life. Now you can significantly extend transmission life with a BG transmission flush every 24 to 30,000 miles or 2 years. BG makes the best transmission flush machine I've ever tested. It renews all of the fluid in your transmission, not just a small part of it. The BG transmission flush machine is safe, too, because it uses the natural circulation of the transmission. Your transmission will work better and last longer. As with everything BG offers, this is a superior service. For more information, go to bgprod.com or bgfindashop.com.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677.
Folks, make sure to subscribe to the Goss's Garage radio show on YouTube, where you can find tips and tricks to save you time and avoid headaches. Speaking of headaches, Jeff would like to know, he says, I have a 2000 Honda Accord that I suspect gets vapor lock when the engine heats up. We may have an issue here with vapor lock. Anyway, more on that in just a minute. when the engine heats up in warm weather. After shutting off the engine, it is near impossible to start again without waiting for at least an hour. Cranking is fine. The other day I sprayed water on the fuel rails and then it started. I have read that an updated fuel pressure regulator is the fix. I'd like to see this car reach 300,000 miles. Is it worth saving? Well, I have no idea whether it's worth saving or not. Whenever we get a car in that has some miles on it and it needs some kind of a major repair, what we recommend is we have a service where we go from one end of the car to the other. I mean, we check everything. And what that tells us is that, maybe you're going to put a new transmission in the car for $3,500. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over the car and see if there are any other hidden things lurking. In other words, maybe you're getting close to needing $1,500 worth of brake work. Well, $3,500 plus 15, we're looking at $5,000 there in total. That may not make any sense at all. Might make more sense to take the car and trade it. So we go over the car from one end to the other before we go into one of these major problems. Now, the next thing here is I asked Jeff, I got to ask you, are you sure about vapor lock? See, it's fuel injected. And although not impossible for vapor lock, it's almost impossible. See, vapor lock occurred on older carbureted cars, and what happened was that there'd be enough heat under the hood of the car that it would cause the fuel in the fuel lines to vaporize, turn into a gas instead of a liquid. And when that happened, it would be pumped into the fuel bowl, and the fuel bowl, it can't deal with gas. It can only deal with liquids. So now you have this lack of fuel, and you crank and you crank and you crank, and nothing happens because, number one, all of the vapor had to be dispelled. Then the system had to reprime itself. Then it had to fill the fuel bowl on the carburetor, and the list goes on and on. Well, because of the way fuel injection is made, especially on older cars like this, they have a line that goes back to the gas tank. You see, what happened with these systems was that you pump a ton of fuel, the most fuel you could ever need, up to the front of the engine. And then what happens is the injectors inject what's needed, and the rest of it goes back to the tank. Well, on a fuel-injected car, if the lines get so hot that the fuel vaporizes, typically the vapor just goes right down that return line back into the fuel tank, path of least resistance, and that's it. You hit the key and the electric fuel pump primes the system, and boom, away you go. So I would question whether or not it is a vapor lock issue. But how do you tell? Well, the easiest way to tell is to take a container of some type of flammable liquid. We usually use brake cleaner or something like that. Starting fluid is made out of ether, and especially on a hot engine, that stuff is way too dangerous to handle because it burns rapidly and it explodes and all kinds of things. So what we do is we take the top off of the air cleaner housing, and we take some brake cleaner and we spray it into the inlet going into the engine. Now, we crank it. If it starts right up, we continue spraying, and we see if we can keep it running that way. If we can, then we know that we're dealing with a fuel problem. All right, but suppose that doesn't start the engine. Well, if that doesn't start the engine, then the things that we look at are, we look at the ignition system, and we're looking to see if the ignition system is producing enough high voltage spark for the spark plugs. You need to have a minimum of 20,000 volts. A $10 spark tester from the parts store will tell you. Just follow the directions with it. It'll tell you how to set it up and adjust it and put it into the end of a plug wire or into the end of a coil on a coil-on-plug configuration. And that will tell you if you have enough high voltage spark. Now Hondas, earlier Hondas like this were famous for having ignition problems. They had ignition problems that when the car would be shut off hot, and you see when you shut an engine off, the temperature climbs dramatically. Now why is that? It climbs because you no longer have air being pulled through the radiator to cool the coolant in the radiator. You no longer have the circulation of coolant. You no longer have the circulation of oil, and oil cools an engine almost as much as coolant does. So all of these things come to a stop, and yet there's a lot of latent heat left over in the engine, so the temperature goes up, up, up when you shut it off. And that's what we call a hot soak. Now the problem with a lot of these Hondas was that their ignition module was heat sensitive, and after they got miles on them, shut the engine off, and you go to turn it back on, nothing. Crank's fine, everything works fine, but there is no high voltage spark for the spark plugs, and of course it won't run. So we have to check to make sure that we have proper spark and proper amount of fuel. So the things to do here: run a fuel pressure test, see what the actual fuel pressure is, see what the fuel volume is. An electric fuel pump on any car has to produce a minimum of 1 pint of fuel in 20 seconds. And if you go to the parts store and get one of their fuel pressure testers, get one of them from their loaner tools department, and you should be able to get one that has a little tube on the side of it so that you can fire up the fuel pump by turning the key on, and you can watch, there's a hose on it, you can put that hose into a graduated container, and you can see if it will pump a pint of fuel in 20 seconds. If it can't, then chances are you don't have enough fuel for the car to run. Fuel pressure, the same thing, it's got to meet manufacturer's specifications. So we're looking at all of these different things, and they may or may not have anything to do with things like fuel pressure regulators. And I love, you go on the internet, you can find an answer for anything. And of course, these answers, although they may be typical, you shouldn't accept them as being absolute. Yes, is it possible that it could be a fuel pressure regulator? Sure it is. But, you know, because there are variances from one car to another, not every car has the same problem. What do? Well, you find one of these answers on the internet, and then you test the fuel pressure regulator. Is your individual one good, or is it bad? Now, you don't just go out and buy all these parts and replace them because some Yahoo on the internet says that this is the most likely thing. Yeah, maybe the most likely, but it's not the only thing. So those are the things that you look at. Now, other things that you need to consider is that in many cases, you may have a leaky injector. So that what happens here is when you turn the car off, the injector leaks down, and as it leaks down, it floods the car. So that is entirely possible that it's flooded. It isn't a lack of fuel, it is too much fuel. So you have to do that. You have to check for that. These are all possible causes. And again, this is a Honda. So don't forget the ignition switch, which historically on Hondas has been a huge problem. Now, ignition switches, I've told you this before, they are a series of small switches mounted into one case. You turn the key, it moves these various parts inside the switch. It'll turn some connections on, it'll turn other connections off. So you could have a situation where the contact inside that switch for the starter is working fine, but the one for the ignition system isn't. So when you turn the key, yeah, it cranks, but it doesn't make a good connection and turn on the ignition system, so you don't get the spark that you need. The other thing is it might turn on the ignition but not the fuel pump. So make sure that you check the ignition switch as well if you have an issue with the ignition system on the car. So lots of things to do here, and it's not just cut and dried that you can replace a part and get it solved, because once in a great while that might work, but most times ain't going to happen, folks. Most times what you're going to do is wind up replacing this part and that part because somebody on the internet says, oh, this is what it is. Somebody else says, oh, no, it's that thing. And the list goes on and on. Finally, you give up. You take the car to a shop. The technician checks things and finds the problem. All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back on Goss's Garage.
Operators are standing by to take your call for Pat at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Think you'll get a deal buying a used car from an individual instead of a dealer? Possibly, but there's a good chance you'll get taken if you wind up dealing with a curb stoner. Curb stoners are low-life scum who buy cars with problems, cobble them together, roll back the miles, make them look good, and resell them. They usually claim the car belonged to a friend or relative, and there's a sad story about a death, financial woes, illness, or other tragedy. If you buy from one of these crooks, you'll probably get a great-looking car, but in poor mechanical or body condition at a slightly lower price. But you won't get a warranty or a good, reliable car. Curb stoner cars are often so bad they only have scrap value. There are curb stoner cars all over the internet, in nearly every shopping center and sitting along the road. Total loss, flood cars are a curb stoner favorite because there are tens of thousands of them and they're easy to disguise. So when buying off the street, question everything. When was the title issued? Is it in the seller's name? Does it show the seller's proper address? Is it from another state? Of course, always have a shop check any used car and get a Carfax vehicle history report before paying a dime. Curb stoners are crooks who will happily steal your money, so be really careful. I get lots of questions about BG products, many about specific products or services like, is BG44K really that good, or are BG transmission, cooling system, and power steering flushes actually necessary? But most popular of all, do I use BG products in my cars? Well, the answer to all of those questions is yes. A regular schedule of BG flushes and chemicals will deliver the longest possible life from all the lubricated and fuel delivery parts on your vehicles. And do I use BG products? You bet I do. I drive nice cars, and I drive a lot. Plus, my live radio and TV shows mean that my cars have to be absolutely reliable. A no start from dirty fuel injectors or a failed transmission just isn't acceptable in my life. Remember, deposits and dirty fluids ruin expensive parts. For reliability like I demand, visit one of the quality shops that sell BG products and perform BG services. To find a BG professional near you, bgfindashop.com.
Now, back to Goss's Garage with your host, Pat Goss.
For more information on today's topic or any topic about buying, repairing, or selling an automobile, visit goss-garage.com or call our 24-hour listener line at 844-885-4677. And you can leave a message there 24/7. We will get back to you on that. Here we have, this is from Big Daddy. And Big Daddy says, this is regarding one of the segments that I did about oils, selecting the right oil and so on. He says, you had a great point there with the high mileage oil for high miles engine. I have an 06 Tacoma 4 liter, 180,000 plus miles on the odometer. You made a perfectly good reference as far as the miles. Mine does not leak nowhere, knock on wood. I assumed it needed high mile engine oil. I put in Mobil 1 high miles, which I didn't well know that I hear this not sure if I even need it. And how can I fix it? Do I flush it and add just regular full synthetic 020 oil? All right, the thing here is, I have no gripe with high mileage oil whatsoever. Under the right circumstances, it is great. But the right circumstances aren't the same for every car. In other words, the ads, the Madison Avenue folks, they keep saying, oh, at 75,000 miles, you gotta put this in. Well, I can tell you in all the years I've been fixing these cars, just because a car has 75,000 miles on it, or maybe we've got 5 of them that have 75,000 miles on them, not all 5 of them are going to have the same amount of wear, going to have the same problems or anything else, because they've been driven differently, they've been maintained differently, and so on. So the fact of the matter is, once you have a situation with your car that maybe it starts leaking a little oil, or maybe it starts burning some oil, and especially if you know the oil burning is the result of valve stem seals as opposed to gunked up oil control rings on the pistons, well, if it's a seal problem that's causing it to burn or leak oil, high mileage oil is great. Now, if it's clogged up oil control rings, which we're seeing on a lot of these new direct injected cars, then what happens is that you don't want high mileage oil. You want to do a regular oil change, but you want to step it up to a BG performance oil change. Yeah, I know it's kind of a dumb name, but it is a really, really great process. It's not all that expensive, and it uses a chemical that frees up the oil control rings on a lot of these cars. And we've had Cadillacs and Hondas, 2 of the worst offenders. They come in burning a quart of oil every 75 to 150 miles, and by just doing that BG performance oil change, we're often able to extend that to a quart of oil every 2,000, 2,500, well within the normal range. So, first you have to identify what's causing the problem. If it's valve stem seals, try the high mileage oil. Can't guarantee that it'll work, but it might. The other thing is, if it's been like this car, this Toyota Tacoma, he's put the high mileage oil in, and now is doubting his decision. So what do? Well, it depends. If it's been in there for a while, the way these high mileage oils work, one of the things that it does is all oils have a swelling substance that reacts with valve seals and various seals and so on in the engine, and it causes them to swell up. So the valve seals, you've got the valve stem like this, and the seal goes around it. What happens is that the extra seal swellers in these high mileage oils cause the seal to swell up so that the seal gets tighter around the valve stem, and that cuts down on the oil loss. Well, that's good if the valve seals are relaxed and bad and allowing oil to leak, but it's not good if they haven't reached that stage yet, because if they aren't bad, it will swell those seals, it'll tighten them around the valve stems, and then what you wind up with is a situation where the valve stem moving up and down in the seal causes them to wear into this new, tighter pattern. Now, you take that and you take the high mileage oil away, therefore you lose those extra seal swellers. Now the seals relax, and guess what? Even though you didn't have a seal problem before, now you may have a seal problem because they have worn into this new tighter position. Now what do? Nothing you can do except go back to high mileage oil and continue using it indefinitely. So in a case like this, drain the high mileage oil, put regular oil in it. If there are no oil consumption problems or anything like that, then what you do, just continue on with the regular non-high mileage oil and wait for a problem to come. When the problem arrives, then you go back to the high mileage oil, and there's a good possibility it could correct your problems. So yes, they are good. No, not for everything. All right, now this one is from Edmund, and he is asking his question relative to the story I did on tire rotation. Now, if you saw that, you know that what we recommend is a modified X rotation. Modified X is going to mean that the two tires that are going onto the drive wheels, and in most cases that's going to be the front wheels, onto the drive wheels of the car get crossed from one side to the other. Now, then the ones that are coming off of the drive wheels stay on the same side of the car, but go to the other end of the car. All right, now, Edmund would like to know, what about all-wheel drive vehicles? How do you rotate them? All right, well, you rotate them to what the car would be if it didn't have all-wheel drive. You look at the architecture of the car. So, the majority of all-wheel drive cars these days will start life as a front-wheel drive, and they'll add the all-wheel drive system to it. So you would use a front-wheel drive modified X rotation, and that would be that you would take the right front or the right rear, move it to the left front, the left rear, move it to the right front, and then the two front tires, same side of the car, to the back. Now, the other thing, of course, is that some of these, like Mercedes or BMW and others, they will start life as a rear-wheel drive car, and their architecture will be that. So there you would use the rear wheel drive modified X pattern, which is very simply going to be that you move the right front to the left rear, the left front to the right rear, and then the two rears stay on the same side and go to the front. So that's really all there is to it. It makes a huge difference. Now, in some cases, you may have something that gets a little confusing. Audi, for instance, a lot of their cars start life as front-wheel drive, but they add their quattro system to it. And the thing of it is that they make it almost into a rear-wheel drive car because they bias everything toward the rear wheels instead of the front. So in that case, like on Audi with a quattro, most of those are going to be a power split of 60% rear, 40% front. So that's a rear bias. So even though it started life as a front-wheel drive car, you're going to use the rotation pattern that you would use for a rear-wheel drive. Now, of course, like everybody chastised me for, I didn't mention directional tires, which, thank heavens, they're going away. We don't see that many directional tires anymore, which you can't switch one from one side of the car to the other. Well, then all you do is move front to back and back to front on the same side of the car. Nothing else you can do. On some cars, you will have a one-position tire. That's cars where the rear tires are a different size than the front ones. That's relatively common, especially on European cars. So what do you do there? Well, if you have directional tires, not a thing in the world you can do. You can't do a basic rotation. You can't do a modified X. You can't do a full X. You can't do anything. They're one position only tires. But a lot of those manufacturers now are putting non-directional tires. They're asymmetrical, which means they have to be mounted on the wheel in a certain way. They'll be marked on the outside. It'll say outside, and then on the inside it'll say inside. Non-directional asymmetrical tires. When you have a situation where you have different sizes on the rear than you do on the front, what do? Well, you leave them on the same end of the car because they have to be the proper size and the proper position and so on. So you take the right rear, put it on the left rear on the right rear. Same thing with the front, just switch them from side to side, and that is your tire rotation when you have staggered tire sizes, bigger tires on the back than you have on the front, and you have non-directional, asymmetrical tires that you're dealing with. They can go on the opposite side. So, just something to consider. We'll take a break. We'll be right back on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
You probably don't think about it, but if you double the life of your car, your fixed expenses per mile will drop 50%. But how can you double the life of a car? Well, that's easy. Simply use BG products and flushes for your routine maintenance. I'll bet you know someone whose cars last a lot longer than yours, plus they never seem to have problems. Now you can enjoy those great savings too. Simply enroll in the BG Protection Plan, and BG will guarantee covered parts for as long as you own your car, in writing. With the BG Protection Plan, long after your car is paid off, you'll still have years of warranty left. Think about it. No payments and no worries about major repair bills. That's amazing. It's almost too good to be true because the BG Protection Plan is also absolutely free. My cars are covered by the BG Protection Plan. Yours should be too. For details, bgprod.com or 800-327-8883.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677.
Folks, make sure to subscribe to the Goss Garage radio show on YouTube, where you can find tips and tricks to save you time and avoid headaches. All right, we're answering a lot of the listeners' questions today. Chiarina, she says, I just bought a brand new Cadillac XT6. Nice car. And I'm considering getting undercarriage protectant, leather protectant, paint protectant, and a clear bra. Do you think I should get all of these options, or is there any way I can do without? My husband thinks undercoating makes the cabin quieter, although this car is already very quiet. It sure is. I want to do what is best for the life of the car. We also live in Park City, Utah, where the winters are long and extreme. All right, got to be careful, because all of these products, they're what we call spiffs or packs, or there are a number of different terms for them within the automobile industry. And most of them are high profit for the dealer without a whole lot of benefit for the purchaser. So, what do? Well, each one of these, what you're really doing is you're buying a warranty, because the products themselves, they don't do all that much. So what you're buying is the warranty that goes with the product, more so than the product itself. So you have to look at the warranty, and you'll see all kinds of things that are included. That's not what you're really concerned with. What you're really concerned with is what's excluded. You don't want to buy something where they have all kinds of loopholes and exclusions and so on that allow them to not fix your car if something happens. So these are the things that you look at. Now, depending on what they want for these services, you don't tell me that, because I don't know, a lot of dealers, I've seen these things, Lord, I've seen them as high as $600 or $700. No. I've seen them as high as $3,000 for a package like this. Now, let's go down the list. None of these really have much value, like I say, other than the warranty. Now, only you can judge if these things will give you enough peace of mind to warrant the cost. They're highly negotiable. I don't know what they want for them, but it isn't entirely unheard of for a dealer to discount these things down to $250 to $450 or so. And then you have to think about it. You can also buy these products yourself, and you can do them. The fabric protection is essentially Scotchgard, or a form of Scotchgard, which you can buy at the grocery store for less than $14. It'll take about 20 minutes to apply it to the inside of the car. So something you might want to consider yourself. The undercoating. Undercoating is a sound deadening material. The only problem with undercoating is that it sometimes blisters, And when it blisters, it allows pockets for road grime and dirt and in salty areas for salt to collect. And it often leads to rust holes through the floorboard of the car. So that's something you got to be careful of. If they were talking about rust proofing, which you already have a great rust-proof or rust-through warranty on that car, just like most all cars do these days. But say you wanted to go longer, you want a rust proofing as opposed to undercoating. Undercoating deadens sound. Rust proofing helps prevent rust. So they're two totally separate things. And like I say, undercoating can actually promote rust. Now, could you do undercoating yourself? Sure you could. You can buy spray cans of undercoating at the local auto parts store. Rust-Oleum is $3.44 per can. 3M, an up-level product, $14 per can. Probably 2 cans is what it would take to undercoat the average car these days, because if you look under most cars, there are going to be all sorts of plastic covers and aluminum heat shields and stuff like that, which make those areas inaccessible. Rented lips, you know the drill, folks. That make these areas inaccessible, so you can't spray them with anything. So, probably going to take, 15, 20 minutes once the car's up in the air where you can get to it to do the undercoating yourself, and you're going to spend, anywhere from $8 to $28 in materials to do it. Now, paint protection, that's something else that you can buy. You can go to the local auto parts store, and they have paint sealants and different things like that, often with some pretty darn good warranties. And the paint protection ranges from $14 up to $45 or $50, and it takes about 15 minutes to apply in most cases. It's not a great big deal. The 3M Clear Bra paint protection for the front of the hood starts at $79. So you've got to look at all of this, depending what they want for it. If they want to charge you $250 and you get at least one decent warranty out of it for some one of the services, then by all means it might make sense. But if they want $1,000, $1,200, $3,000, whatever, then chances are this makes no sense whatsoever. And always remember that what you're really buying is the warranty, not the product. These products don't do all that much. All they're doing is they're basing things on actuarials that chances are the factory warranty is going to cover things so they don't have to, or you're going to get rid of the car before anything happens. So, they pretty well got this stuff figured out. They're in business. They have to know this stuff. So those are all things that you want to consider on these protection packages. They're not as amazing as they might seem. All right, Jeremy. Hey, Pat. I don't use it. I stick to Mobile One, but just out of curiosity, why do you have such a visceral distaste for the A-oil products? Is it the rip-off pricing? Well, A oil, which is very, very common and highly advertised and so on. Hey, I don't have a bit of a problem with the products themselves. A oil products, no issue with them at all. But over the years, when I have not included a bottle of A oil, I have been called every kind of nasty name. I've been told I am completely ignorant, and even had 3 death threats from company reps. Excuse me, folks? You guys, you're really out there. Anyway, some of these have been in writing on some form of company letterhead. One time I said it was best to follow the manufacturer's maintenance schedule while the car was under warranty, and received a call. It was supposedly from the president of A Oil. All right. The A president said, well, if anyone has a problem, you just tell them to call me and I'll set the manufacturer straight. What? You know, like arrogance will sway General Motors. I have no problem with these products, but the things that I have been subjected to by the people who sell these products and represent them and so on, unbelievable. So that's the only reason I don't recommend them or anything. I think that a company has to have a certain amount of responsibility and a certain amount of restraint. You can't just say whatever you want, whenever you want, and threaten people and things like that. So if you use A oil and you're happy with it, by all means, continue. I have no problem with that. Wouldn't have any problem with using it in my own cars if the attitude of these people was different. So that's why I do not include A oil. And no, I'm not going to use their name. No, I am not going to spell their name, because the things that they have said to me over the years are really, really bad. So, all right. Some other things that we have here. Mike was talking about a rattle in the front of a Chrysler Corporation car. I told him to check the sway bar frame bushings. Said they looked good. I said, well, how did you test them? I said, did you take them off and drive the car to see if the rattle was good? No, they just look good. Okay, well, come to find out, after some back and forth and some proper testing and so on, what happened was that the bushings were indeed bad. So if you get these rattling noises especially in the front end, but sometimes in the back of just about any year, make, and model of car, that the rattling noises occur at low speeds over these little tiny bumps and so on, then the very first thing that you want to look at are the sway bar frame bushings. Now, the sway bar goes from one side of the car to the other, has a link that goes down to the lower control arm, and as one arm comes up as you go around a corner, it pushes against the other one, and this twisting resistance helps to keep the car flat going around corners. That's why they're called sway bars, because they reduce the swaying effect or the leaning effect of the car as it goes around corners. Well, this thing is constantly twisting and turning inside those rubber bushings where it's mounted to the frame. And over time, this constant movement against these rubber bushings causes the interior surfaces of the rubber to become hardened, I guess from heat and the movement and so on. And once that happens, even the teeniest little bit of clearance in there, the bushing can look like brand new, but maybe you got a couple thousandths of an inch, which you can't see, couple thousandths of an inch of clearance, and they will literally, I mean literally, sometimes rattle so bad that it sounds like some major part of the car is going to fall off at any second. So don't forget those sway bar frame bushings, because it is such a common problem, and in most cases they're really easy to replace. In most cases you got the two bushings. They're held on by a flat metal strap with two bolts in each one. You take the bolts down, the whole thing drops down. You take the metal strap off. The bushing usually has a slot. You just open it up, take it off, then you paint the new one, the inside of the new one, and the area on the sway bar where it rides, you paint those areas with anti-seize compound and put it back together, and you would be amazed. Even if you don't have noticeable noises, or you don't think you do, lots of times you'll find that this makes the whole car feel tighter and much more secure and so on. So sway bar frame bushings, don't overlook them. All right, folks, we are at that point once more. I want to thank you for listening. Thanks to Stevie McMillan, George Stockton for producing today's show. For everyone here at Goss's Garage, I'm Pat Goss. Until next time, got a big favor to ask of you folks. Drive gently. See